Hello. Well, I'll tell you what, I started another video and I decided I needed some revisions. I took a break and then this morning all hell broke loose. So I'm making a different video. And then that one started in my mind as a public service announcement. I wanted to warn people of something to watch out for. And then it morphed into more an example of a lesson that I think many of us have to learn. So have you ever wondered why your intuition can be so spot on about other people, and yet when it comes to really important things that happen in your own life, you just don't have a freaking clue? You totally misread the signals. You allowed yourself to be played, and you wonder why. Why is it so good with other people, and why can't I figure my own shit out? Why am I allowing this stuff to happen? It's not a coincidence at all. It's kind of what has to happen for us to learn certain lessons. And I have found that apparently part of my path is that Spirit is putting me into certain situations so that I will see that there needs to be something changed. There needs to be some reform. Apparently, because I am ballsy enough to mention it to people, sometimes to call them out on it, sometimes to blow the whistle. So people, I got played. And it's something that may happen to you because by having my own intuition blocked on this, I made some choices that allowed it. But if I share it with you, hopefully you can avoid the same thing. You know, to expose a scam, you have to be willing to raise your hand and say, yeah, I was foolish enough to get sucked into this. I was a dumb shit. You have to be willing to admit that you just didn't see the warning signs or that you didn't do your research. You have to basically say, yeah, I made some really dumb moves. But you know, that's why this collective concept that we hear about is important, because when we belong to a collective, certain people go through certain things. They share their lessons. They share what came out of it so that not everyone else in the collective has to go through the same thing. So for whatever collective I happen to be in, I'm going to share my experiences because I hate to see people taken advantage of. I hate to see people scammed. So I guess, I took one for the team. And I'm going to share with you what happened. So hopefully you can continue to be on the team without having to go through the same thing. So what happened is I was approached by somebody in a group that I run on Facebook. I had had one dealing with her, and I really didn't know anything about her, but she started out with flattering words. Oh, Eagle always loves that. And then she proposed that she thought I would be a good candidate for this thing that she was involved in, called a dream weaving loom. Now, people, I have to tell you, maybe you are totally aware of this, not me, because I'm very heavily affected by negativity in this world. I used to be a captioner and exposed to the horrors of the world when captioning news, and when I realized after the brain surgeries how strong of an empath was, I choose not to expose myself to news that will upset me. It's hard enough to stay balanced when you're a water sign. So I just choose not to follow things that might be upsetting, which means I'm ignorant about a lot of things that people that follow the news might be aware of. I had no idea. So a dream weaving loom is a variation of what you might have heard referred to as blessings looms. As it turns out, it is just a modification of a Ponzi scheme. But I wasn't even all that aware of how a Ponzi scheme works. I've heard of pyramids and that kind of thing, but I've never really looked into it. I've never had to analyze it as to myself. Now, the reason I'm sharing this on my channel is because these things are framed as spiritual. These are things that are framed as community with like-minded people, being supported by the energy of like-hearted, like-minded people, growth, good stuff like that, that we spiritual people just hold on to and like, ooh, yes. So there wasn't a whole lot presented ahead of time, just kind of vague, but honestly, what was my downfall is I immediately latched onto the idea that maybe finally I'll connect with my soul tribe. I live a very isolated life. I used to think that that was perfectly fine. I'm an introvert. This is perfect. As it turns out, I'm kind of an extrovert too, or at least I'm developing into one. I really miss being around people. Of course, now in COVID, we all miss being around people, but this has been going on for a long time. I just don't have people that want to hang out with me, that want to do things with me. And, I used to see that as a personal insult, but I don't now. It's something about my energy. I'm kind of intense, blah, blah, blah. It's not anything I can change, or if I could, that I would, because I'm finally accepting I am who I am. And some people are comfortable with that, and most people are not. Anyway, I have been getting card messages about meeting my soul tribe, and I thought this must be it. I just let myself be totally blinded to any red flags. And then it came out that there would be an investment. But it wasn't presented as there will be an investment so you can make money. It was presented as when people don't invest anything of themselves into something, then they will often give up. They won't really put their all into it. This is a collection of sisters, and we're committing not only to ourselves but to each other. Honestly, the money part, didn't even register as something that I was interested in. I did have to say, though, that, with the way my income comes in, it's fixed, and that I couldn't do the amount that was being asked for. And I was told, that making some monthly payments would be fine. So there is where, my intuition and my circumstances protected me where other people would have taken the full hit. I just took 1 month's worth. And then you are asked to give your sacred yes, that you will commit to this. And I don't take that lightly. So I thought that I had gotten a good picture of what I was getting into. I had stars in my eyes about connecting with spiritual women that might be my soul tribe. I really conned myself into this. And then I was admitted into the Loom. Only then were the documents disclosed, and I read them, but I didn't fully register everything until there was a meeting of the people in this loom, and someone mentioned, I know that dream weaving looms get a bad rap, I just don't see it. That registered a little bit. It was enough that I went back to the documents, read them again, and realized that I would be expected to recruit more people into the loom. All of a sudden, the alarms went off, and I thought, this isn't right, because I honestly was feeling that this hadn't gone down in the way I would have wanted it to. I realized that there were a lot of things that hadn't been disclosed. But here I am thinking, but I gave my sacred yes. Now, luckily, not the full investment, because it would have been so much out of my income that it would have been hard to deal with. And I'm not talking huge amounts of money. You know, if people were asking for huge amounts of money, that would have been a big red flag. But for me, that's all I'm saying. So I love the women. I think this is wonderful. But how I thought there was going to be connection between them wasn't going to be the case. Just all of a sudden, it was like I woke up out of my own idealized fantasy about what I thought that was going to be, and saw the reality of it and thought I would never recruit anyone like this. You know, I am all about transparency. I want people to know what they're getting into. I don't want anyone ever to feel tricked by me. I mean, me, myself, I guess I am confusing. People might wonder, you know, if they're being tricked. But no, I just am kind of all over the place. That's the way it goes with me. I confuse myself. So I took the time to make a video. And I set things out as to why I didn't think that this loom was for me. But the whole time I'm thinking, you know, I gave my sacred yes. I could see how people that had put the full amount in would be saying, I don't want to admit that I invested foolishly. I put enough into this, I better see it through. They might have compromised their own values just so they didn't lose their investment. Luckily, that was not the case for me. It was that sacred yes. But as I was preparing for the video, I realized, wait a minute. You can't give a sacred yes if you are not being told exactly what you're saying yes to. And that is how it went down. You know, things were not disclosed until I was in. Now, I'm not meaning to throw these women under the bus. They may all be victims of this without realizing it. That's where, you know, I'm a bit shaky because I like to see the good in people. It could be that I was consciously scammed. You know, that could be, but Pollyanna, what can I say? So I did take the time to make this video and explained why I couldn't fulfill what was going to be required of me, not ethically, because I would not ever welcome anyone in the way it had happened with me. I would want them to know everything before they committed. And I waited a day, and there were no comments. No one had watched it, potentially, or they weren't going to address it. They just ignored it. So this is like day 2. At least I caught on fairly quickly. Like 3 or 4 in the morning on the 3rd day, you know, I had been losing sleep over this, stressing out. And I sat here in my robe and made another video. What I did is I posted the last robe video in the Loom, and then I left. And I've not heard anything again. Now that's been like 4 or 5 days, 4 days I think. And for the first time, even though I call myself the Queen of Google, I thought to look this up. You know, the way it was presented, I thought it was just some neat little spiritual idea, and there was a little bit in the documents I got after I was admitted into the Loom that told a bit of the history. But as to the comment about, you know, some people don't have good things to say, I just hadn't had that register until this morning, and I looked it up and found that this is a well-known scam that has had a resurgence on social media platforms, Facebook specifically. because it's a quick money making method for people during COVID. The people that are aware know that there are people that are struggling for money. And so they're hitting them up and making them think that it's a get rich quick scheme. It's not called a Ponzi scheme. It's not called a pyramid. It's called a loom. Who the hell knows what a loom is other than, something you weave with? Well, me. Again, the person that ignores the news so I don't get too out of balance. So I got played, people. Now, again, I always like to give the benefit of the doubt. Maybe the woman that approached me didn't see it that way. Maybe she bought totally into it and she still hasn't woken up to it. What I knew I had to do was to remove her from the group, because if it was intentional, I didn't want any of the people in my group to be exposed to that. And then I wrote a long post to the members of my group telling them what to watch out for, and added that if there were any more people that had joined my group that had the intention of approaching the other members with this, they were welcome to let themselves out of the group voluntarily right now, that it wasn't going to happen. And I knew I would be making this video because it has more of a reach than my private group. I don't want other people falling for this, for the amount of investment that's being asked for in these times when people have lost their jobs and are struggling. To fork that kind of money over and then find out that they had been duped, it hadn't been disclosed what would be expected of them, and that, this wouldn't happen until this. I had to make this as a PSA. But really then the lesson. For me, my vulnerability was, I thought I was going to find connection. As a lonely person, I thought maybe I was going to connect with my soul tribe. Something I have been hoping for. People that would get me, that would support me, that would enjoy me, that would want to do things with me, And maybe that sounds pitiful, but that is the way it is. And if you want to perceive me as pitiful, that's okay. It is kind of a circumstance that Spirit has put me into. And, that's just the way it is. I don't want to go, wham, 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 poor me. It's been odd. I'll have to say there's one person that I have met that felt like home. But I don't have that person in my life. I have lived a rather lonely existence, and I jumped at the chance which blinded me to what I should have seen. I don't know what other people's vulnerabilities are. Probably most of the people, their vulnerability is they need money, and they see this as a way to get it. We are blind to what our intuition would normally be cluing us into, because there are lessons to be learned. And so I had to realize that this longing to belong will take me down if I don't address it. I have to find within myself that home. It's a wound in me that was appealed to. And if these are real scammers, they're probably very good at figuring out what are people's wounds to play to. So I've learned. I want to prevent you from having to learn in the same way. It's the kind of situation where if you wanted to, you could say, oh my God, everyone in the world is just shitty and I'm not ever going to trust anyone again. Or I'm not ever going to trust myself because look how I dropped the ball here. We have to avoid those things where everybody or always or never, I don't know why I'm doing the hand things, come into it, because you can't generalize that way. Sure, maybe the last 10 people screwed you over and you decide you're not ever going to trust anyone again, but what if the 11th person is the one that is supposed to come into your life and show you that you can trust again? It's hard to be hurt. It's hard to be taken advantage of. It's hard to be played. It's hard to admit that we walked right into it. But it shouldn't be enough to make us give up on people. You know, there's that saying about one bad apple can spoil the whole bunch. No, it's just one bad apple. And maybe it corrupts a few of the other apples that were laying in the basket next to that rotten one. But there are plenty of apples that weren't touching it that are still going to be delicious. We can't let these kinds of things make us suspicious of everyone. We have to recognize these kinds of things are put into our life so we can learn the lesson. And for me, trust has been a big one. So it makes me feel a little bit wobbly. But from what I've been going through, I'm at the point where I realize, no, I did learn a good lesson. I will present it to hopefully help other people avoid the same lesson. But I know now it doesn't mean that it's going to keep happening again and again and again, unless that is what I anticipate. Because what we anticipate, what we focus on, is what we bring toward us. So I'm not giving up on people. I don't want you to give up on people, no matter how many times we are hurt. We're never going to find that time we won't be hurt unless we take the chance. Now, as to the sacred yes, how did I manage my way through that? Well, this is how. I had to come up with a corny analogy so that I could process it the right way. So, if you were dating someone, and you thought they were this, this, and this because that's what they presented to you, and you fell in love with the person, and they proposed to you, and you said yes. You did the big wedding, you did the whatever, reception, honeymoon, festivities, or whatever, and then the next day, you're sitting across the table from your new spouse, and they say, you know what? I played you. I'm not at all the person you fell in love with. I just wanted to obtain you, or, be legally committed to you for your money or your status or whatever. I don't love you. I'm not who you thought I was. Could your vow really be valid? So when I realized the things that had not been transparent, the things that had not been presented to me, I could release myself from that sacred yes. I'm not gonna pretend that I didn't have a lot of misery trying to figure this out. But then I realized, wait a minute. You can't fully commit and give a promise or a vow unless you have the full picture, unless you have the real person presenting themselves, unless you know fully in a contract before you accept a job position. We can't be holding on to things out of guilt if we committed without knowing the real story, the real person, the real job, whatever. That's how I released myself from that anxiety. When I give my word, but I have to be knowing exactly what the real picture is. So if you've had similar things going on in your life, and you are staying because you feel guilty that you committed, if you were not shown the real person, if you were not given all the information, if you were not fully aware of what you were giving into and what you were making your promise to, don't stay out of guilt. It takes our power away. So for me, although I haven't done it up to this point, I'm going to do this now. And if you have a situation in your life where you realize you have given your power away, do it along with me. It's pretty simple. Sit up straight or stand up straight. Some kind of posture of authority. I am taking back my power from any person, place, or situation I have left it, knowing that it will return to me pure and untainted from where it has been. I welcome it, knowing that it is my power and belongs with no other person, place, or situation. Oh yeah. Now that can be more complicated. I actually have more of a scenario that I share with people when I encourage them to take their power back. But just now doing that, I feel so much better. We can't feel bad that we got played because we're going to learn from it. But there may be good to be done in situations like this where we share without shame that we got taken in so that other people won't go through the same thing. There's my PSA. Watch out for anything that's called a loom. If it still sounds intriguing to you, I have to point out that what I found in the articles is that anyone knowingly participating in one of these looms is actually committing a crime and could be prosecuted. You don't want to go there, even if there is a potential of money. And if the thing is found out before the loom is completed, you're not ever going to see anything from your investment anyway. You know, for me, I didn't get my connection with spiritual women that I hoped for, but oh well, I'm not going to give up on that. Someday I'll meet my soul tribe. You know, everyone gets played at one time or another in life. They can curl up in a ball and say, I'm never going to be hurt again. I'm not ever going to put myself out there and take a chance again. Or they can say, you know what? I learned from it. The next one is going to be so much different. The next one is going to restore my faith. All right, guys.